Hello, and welcome to the Achieve Optimum Health Summit, where we explore how to prevent and reverse chronic illness. And today I have a very special guest, Chef AJ. She has been devoted to a plant-based diet for almost 40 years. She's the host of the television series Healthy Living with Chef AJ that airs on Foodie TV and the author of the popular book, Unprocessed, How to Achieve Vibrant Health and Your Ideal Weight. And her latest book, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight, has received glowing endorsement by many luminaries in the plant-based movement. And she is always the creator of the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, helping hundreds of people to achieve optimum health and body they deserve. And is proud to say that her IQ is higher than her cholesterol. I love that statement, by the way. Welcome, Chef AJ. I am so excited to host you here. I'm a huge fan of yours, and I absolutely love your personal story.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So we all know that obesity is a common issue these days, and it's related to serious health problems and chronic conditions. However, you have found secrets to cure obesity by making simple changes in lifestyle. So eating healthy is an option we all aware of, but it comes with challenges. So today I would like to talk to you about the secrets to weight loss without having those challenges and how to overcome them. So Chef AJ, you are a celebrity in the plant-based movement. But for those who may never heard of you, can you please a little bit tell about yourself and what motivated you to become vegan?
Absolutely. So I've been vegan actually for almost 43 years now. And I think it really was motivated initially by my love of animals. I was a freshman in 1977 at the University of Pennsylvania. I was studying to be a veterinarian. And I joked that instead I became a vegetarian because very first day of school, I was assigned to work for a veterinarian because I was on scholarship, and he handed me a tank of live salamanders and he said, I need you to cut their heads off. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, I'm doing protein lens regeneration experiments in the amphibian and I only need their eyes. And I was a very squeamish person anyway. I never liked it whenever I get blood taken. I've got to look this way. I could never do things like fishing or, touch bugs or things like that. And so I didn't want to do it, but I was worried that my future was on my line if I turned this man down. As it turned out, I did eventually turn him down completely. I did one salamander, and I was just mortified that I killed a poor defenseless creature for no reason. And I started vomiting, and I went to the student health center. I was so shaken up, and I never, harmed another animal again knowingly. I ended up not becoming a veterinarian because I wasn't able to do that anymore. I wasn't able to dissect the frog or the cat or any of those things that were required in the 70s that now, thanks to Dr. Neil Barnard and Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, students don't have to do anymore. So I became an instant ethical vegan on September 1st, 1977.
That's awesome. So I know just by reading your story that you ate a lot of processed food when you were a child. So can you tell us more about that? So what was your diet like when you were a child?
Not so great. I ate a lot of processed food even as a vegan. As a matter of fact, the first 26 years that I was vegan, I ate a junk food vegan diet, because you can eat candies, cakes, cookies, pies, ice cream, soda pop, French fries, potato chips. That's all vegan. So it's not that my mom was a terrible mother. She made home cooked meals every night. So we ate real food. It's just that I always managed to get the other stuff. I remember we had this big cabinet in our house in Chicago, and I actually had to get on a step stool to reach it. And I would find all the stuff there, all the processed cereals, the sugary cereals, Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, Lucky Charms, Magically Delicious, Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries, all those kind of, non-food processed food items we had. And, we had chips and soda and things like that. And it's not like that's what my mom served us, but they were available. And I seemed to have a preference for that over real food. And hence I became fat by the time I was 5 years old. And in the 60s, there weren't that many fat kids. There was about one in every grade. And that was me all through high school. And by the age of 11, I had not even turned 5 feet tall and I weighed 160 pounds, which is obese. And in my 20s, I got up to close to 200 pounds. And, you can do this as a vegan. Vegan is not a guarantee of weight loss. If you do a whole food plant-based diet, it's pretty much a guarantee of weight loss. But, processed food is not healthy for anyone, whether they're vegan or not. And it's especially not healthy for children.
So how you were able to overcome that? Because you look amazing now.
Thank you.
For your age and for your complexion. So how did you manage that?
Well, thank you. I'm going to be 60 in a few months, and the secret is vegetables. And so when I was a junk food vegan, I really wasn't eating any vegetables, any fruit. I was eating all vegan processed food, which now it's so prevalent. When I became vegan in 77, we didn't even have boxed plant milk or powdered soy milk or Gardein or Daiya cheese or Beyond Meat or Impossible. We didn't have any of that. Yet I still managed to be a fat vegan, just eating the junk food that was vegan. And so when I learned to eat a whole food plant-based diet, eating foods from actual plants instead of ones that were manufactured in a plant, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, I was able to, overcome obesity. Also, what was interesting is it wasn't just that I was fat, but I actually had gotten pretty sick in my early 40s. I was actually bleeding internally from what they called precancerous polyps in my colon from basically eating a diet for 43 years with no fiber. I was having for breakfast Coke Slurpees with extra vanilla syrup. For lunch, I was having Dr. Pepper big gulps. That's vegan as far as I know, but it's certainly not healthy.
So basically, just based on your experience and based, what I read and based my own personal story, eating, like standard American diet, even being vegan, leads to all sorts of the chronic conditions. And that's what you had, that's what I had. And the only way to, basically reverse it and, but better if we can prevent it just with a whole food plant-based diet. But I hear that some people say that even after adopting, now I'm going to talk about weight loss, after adopting the plant-based diet, they are still challenged with weight. So can you comment on that? Why is that happening?
Absolutely, because they're eating a diet that's too rich for their species. So in other words, we evolved at a calorie density. Dr. Doug Lyle, an evolutionary psychologist, who's the psychologist at both the McDougall Live-In program and the True North Health Center, the co-author of The Pleasure Trap, he said that we evolved at a calorie density of about 700 calories per pound. Well, we're eating way more than that. So Americans eat about 92% of their calories from animal products and processed food, which have a caloric density much higher than 700 calories per pound. They're eating less than 10% of their calories from fruits and vegetables, which have a caloric density of about 100 to 300 calories a pound. Potatoes, rice, and beans, 400, 500, 600 calories a pound. So we're eating a diet that's too rich for our species. And the thing is it can be plants. Look, there's nothing unhealthy about having, a little avocado, a little nut butters, but these things are very calorically dense. Avocado, 750 calories a pound. Nuts and seeds are anywhere from 2,600 to 3,200 calories a pound. So those whole plant foods, while healthy, are very, very calorically dense. And some people just are eating too much of them for their, genetics. Some people can eat a lot more fat and not be fat, but some can't, especially women, especially menopausal women. But think about it, processed foods, which don't exist in nature, things like sugar, 1,800 calories per pound. Beets are about 195 calories per pound. You process a food, you make it calorie rich, nutrient poor, and you make it exponentially much more calorically dense. Take dried fruit, for example. It's healthy. It's a fruit. They've removed the water, but apples are 200 calories a pound. So are grapes. But raisins and dried apples are 1,300 calories per pound. They're 6 times as calorically dense. So what's happened is we're eating at a caloric density higher than what we need to be at an ideal or normal body weight. And that's basically what happens. And that's what happens when you process food. Corn. Eating corn on the cob, for example, is about 500 calories per pound. Most people that I know can't eat more than 2, maybe 3, ears of corn. But you take corn and you process it into corn oil, you now need 16 ears of corn to make 1 tablespoon of corn oil. Nobody would eat 16 ears of corn. So when you remove the fiber, when you remove the water, not only do you remove satiety, but you increase the caloric density just dramatically. And so that's what happened. Oil is 4,000 calories a pound. Corn is 500, 8 times as calorically dense. And that's why we're just eating Not just so much that we're eating more food. We may be doing that as well, but we're eating more calorically dense foods than our ancestors evolved at.
So what would you say are there any foods that should be completely avoided based on this calorie density theory?
Depending on who you listen to, because you could I don't advocate certain foods for health reasons, but you actually could eat anything and still employ the principles of calorie density if you understood them, but you would have to eat far fewer of the more calorically dense foods. But it's much easier if you just focus on what I call the left of the red line foods, the whole plant foods that are low in caloric density, high in nutrient density, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 calories per pound, because then you don't have to worry about how much you eat or when you eat or why you eat. You can eat ad libitum whenever you want if you're eating at a caloric density that is 567 calories per pound or less. If you want to include the richer foods, it's not that you can never do that, but then you got to do a little bit more math, because you need to keep that average calorie density to what our ancestors kept at about 700 calories per pound or less, and even less if you want to lose weight. You can usually maintain weight at that caloric density. But think about it, people eat so much processed food, sugar, 1,800 calories a pound, flour or bread, 1,500 calories per pound, chocolate, 2,500 calories per pound, dairy products, 1,600 calories per pound. These processed foods throughout most of human history didn't exist in nature, and they are just too calorically dense. Plus, what's worse is that they don't have fiber and they don't have water, which means they don't have satiety. You can't feel full eating them. And fiber plus water really is the secret to weight loss, because fiber and water, when it's in the food, like the whole plant food, like fruits and vegetables, it creates what's known as bulk, like a sponge absorbing water, getting bigger, and that happens in your stomach, and that's what creates satiety. So I don't recommend people eat processed food, whether they're vegan or not, and I don't recommend people eat animal products, whether they're vegan or not, and these are foods that are also very, very calorically dense.
What about oils? We love oils. Everyone cook with oils. And by listening to Dr. Goldheimer and reading his book, Pleasure Trap, we all know that he is a big advocate for SOS-free diet. So it means no sugar, no oil, no salt. So how to cook without oil? And because oil is a basically calorie dense food.
Oil
Right?
at 4,000 calories per pound is the most calorically dense food on the planet. And I use the term food loosely because I don't think of oil as a food. I think of oil as something that cars need, but not humans. So I can look at this two ways. First, from the health equation, and then from the caloric density equation. So do we need fat? Yes. But how much do we need? And that is very debatable. I myself host a summit called The Real Truth About Weight Loss, and the experts that I've interviewed said the only fat we really need is those essential omega-3 fatty acids, which we can't make ourselves. And as little as 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed a day is enough for most people to get adequate EFAs. So that's that. But if you've ever watched the movie Forks Over Knives or read Dr. Esselson's book, Prevent or Reverse Heart Disease, he talks about how oil is not healthy, how it damages our endothelial cells, the lining of our vasculature, which is the life jacket of our circulatory system, and is obesogenic, diabetogenic, and what's the word? Obesity, and what's the third? I can't think of the third word right now, but basically that it causes or contributes to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Atherogenic, that was the third word I was trying to think of. And so even if oil was healthy, and I don't believe it is, it takes about 41 hours to make 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And for those many calories, you could have like 2 pounds of vegetables. It's very calorically dense. It's 4,000 calories a pound. It has no fiber, so it can't activate your mechanisms of satiety like your stretch receptors to tell you that you're full. It has no nutrients, so it can't activate your nutrient receptors. And if there was anything beneficial in oil that you feel that you need, wouldn't it be in the olive, where it has the whole package with the fiber and the water and the vitamins and the minerals and phytochemicals and antioxidants and micronutrients? So I make the case, and I made this years ago in my first book, Unprocessed, that we're just not designed to eat processed food. So eat the whole food, not the processed food version. Plus oil is a process with a chemical called lye. I don't know how we got to a point where it was considered a health food. In the ancient days, it was a prize that was given to Olympians, like back in the Roman Colosseum, that they would adorn their body with, which is fine if you want to put coconut oil on your skin and hair. It's a great moisturizer. Just don't put it in your mouth. It really is the most fattening food on the planet. And people say they like it, but really what they like about it is its high caloric density, because we produce a neurotransmitter called dopamine. We produce this in the brain whenever we have a pleasurable experience like eating or sex. And all food stimulates the production of dopamine in the brain, but the more calorically concentrated the calories, the more dopamine is released. So we say we like oil better because we get more of this dopamine from it, because by itself, it really doesn't taste very good. I don't know very many people running around just drinking oil. You would actually vomit, because oil can be an emetic. When we use oil, then we got to use a lot more salt, because it coats the taste buds of our tongue where we can't even taste the food. So cooking without oil is actually, between oil, sugar, and salt, it's probably the easiest. And actually, foods actually taste better without it. It's very simple. You can saute with nothing. You can do what's called dry saute. You can saute in water. You can saute in fruit or vegetable juice, or no sodium vegetable broth. So it's actually very easy to cook. I was a restaurant chef for 5 years, and I didn't use any oil. So the only thing you really can't do without oil is fry, but we don't want to be eating fried foods anyway. So of sugar, oil, and salt, oil is pretty easy to not use, and food actually tastes better, in my opinion, without it.
It was a very interesting experiment while I was at the Goldhammer's Clinic, True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, at the 10 days water fast. And I've been to many of the cooking classes. And at one class, Chef Ramsay, he showed us an experiment. So he prepared the raw vegan dressing for the salad. And then he told us, why don't you try it? So it was, full-blown taste of, veggies and spices and everything. And then he puts oil into that. And you can't taste anything, because it basically kills our taste buds. And then he puts a little bit of sugar and a little bit of salt. And it enhances, the taste. So that's, so the oil basically, it doesn't make the food taste better.
You're absolutely right. And I actually was at a conference where he did that as an experiment, and it really blew people's minds. And, oil is insidious, which means it slips under the radar undetected by our mechanisms of satiety, our stretch, nutrient, and calorie receptors. They've done studies where they've given people a restaurant meal, like, for example, pasta primavera, and they've made them the same meal at home. So if you were going to make this meal at home, you might, boil up some pasta, and you might make an oil-free marinara. I've got several recipes for those, for example, in my book. And you would steam some vegetables, and you'd have a nice plate of food. And at the restaurant, they would do it a little bit differently. So first of all, they would boil the pasta in water that had tons of oil put in. When the pasta comes out, they put more oil on. And then in the marinara sauce, there might be up to a cup of oil, who knows, in that recipe. And when they steam the vegetables, they're putting more fat on, either butter and oil. So for the same amount of food that you would have at home, the restaurant version had 500 more calories. But when they did this study, people eating them couldn't detect any more fullness from the restaurant meal, even though it had 500 calories more. And so that's why people that use oil or eat at restaurants or other people's houses, they're using oil, they're getting all these calories without getting any fuller. And that's really going to pack on the pounds, especially because these calories come from fat. And as we know from Dr. McDougall, the fat we eat is the fat we wear.
So what would be the alternative to oil when it comes to salad dressings, for instance?
Yeah, so I'm not against people eating fat if it's whole food fat, like tahini or nuts or seeds or even avocado. So first of all, if people want that mouthfeel, if they want the fat, they can certainly use those things to make it. I personally love using the flavored balsamic vinegars that are so prevalent in many companies across the United States. California balsamic is my favorite because they have a lot of the savory flavors, but these are so delicious because they're reduced. So they're thicker and they're sweeter, not from sugar, just from the reducing and the grapes. And they come in like 30 flavors. I never get bored. So I love to use these flavored vinegars. And I know Dr. Esselstyn recommends balsamic vinegar too for people to put on their greens. And so that is one thing people can do. But, I have several recipes in both of my books, just oil-free dressings made out of things like fruits or vegetables or lots of herbs and spices. When you have a really good salad that's interesting, that has so many things like fresh mango on it or grapes or pineapple, you almost don't even need dressing.
That's interesting. And me being a raw vegan, I use a lot of dressing from nuts, so nut based. But you can also not even use nuts. I mean, just avocado dressing, make it a good salad dressing.
Absolutely. You can make a salad dressing out of beans. I mean, salsa can be a salad dressing. You can take hummus and thin it out a little bit with some water or lemon juice. That can be a dressing. I have a recipe called Yummy Sauce that probably has 30 variations. That could be a salad dressing.
Where we can find all your amazing recipes?
Well, I have a YouTube channel. My name's Chef Asia. I do a lot of the recipes there, but I have two books. One is called Unprocessed, and the second book is called The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss. And each book has over 100 recipes, and there's always going to be a salad dressing or a dressing category in the book.
So now talking about your book, so tell me a little bit about your book Unprocessed and what inspired you to write this book.
So my first book Unprocessed was written in 2010, and it was based on much of what I learned at a place called the Optimal Health Institute in San Diego and in Austin, Texas, where I went as actually I was at the time a fat raw vegan in 2003 who had the beginning of colon cancer. And it was the first place that I learned from any health professional, let alone doctors and nurses, that what we eat actually has a profound effect on not only how we look, how we feel, but what diseases we get and what diseases we can actually reverse. And it was there that I learned that, for any disease to exist in the body, whether it's stage 4 cancer or common cold, you need to be in an inflamed state. Inflammation has to be present. And that all the foods I was eating as a junk food vegan, soda and Slurpees and all kinds of treats, these were inflammatory. And I wasn't really eating anything that was food, like fruits or vegetables, and that was necessary for my healing. And so I really felt that what Jack LaLanne had been saying his whole life, that if God made it, eat it, if man made it, don't eat it, is true. And it completely changed the way I looked at food. So when I got home from the Optimum Health Institute, I realized that almost everything they sell in a grocery store isn't food. If it comes in a bag, a box, a bottle, or a can, I mean, there's some exceptions. If you get salt-free beans, that's food. But for the most part, if it's packaged, if it's processed and refined, it's not food. And the only food is really what's in the produce aisle and the bulk aisle. So that's why I wrote my first book, Unprocessed. The recipes are a little bit richer because they do include the nuts and the seeds. The second book was more geared towards weight loss. And same principles though, whole food, plant-based, no sugar, no oil, no salt, just like they teach at the True North Health Center. But it was geared more towards caloric density, maximizing the amount of fruits and vegetables you eat to lower the caloric density of what you eat for people that needed or wanted to lose weight.
That's fabulous. I want to elaborate a little bit about your personal story. So you've said that you have this precancerous condition, right? So they found polyps. So were you able to manage that just with diet and changing your lifestyle?
Yeah, that was what was really amazing. So I remember checking into the Optimum Health Institute on Sunday, July 6, 2003. And before when the cab picked me up at the San Diego airport, I had him take me to 7-Eleven, and I had a Coke Slurpee in one hand and a Dr. Pepper in the other, and I was drinking it really fast because I know that people had told me if you're caught with any contraband there, they kick you out and they don't give you your money back. And I kind of had a feeling that the writing was on the wall, that they were going to tell me that Slurpees and Dr. Peppers weren't very good for my condition in general or health, specifically. And so the reason I had gone there is because the doctor had told me when I had this diagnosed, that I was going to probably have to have surgery. Not probably, he said I was going to have to have surgery because he couldn't remove the precancerous polyps during the routine procedure. And I am a big chicken when it comes to anesthesia. I had an allergic reaction in my teens. And remember, I was supposed to go home the same day from this operation, and I woke up being resuscitated by a team of respiratory therapists because I was allergic to the anesthetic. And since then, I mean, I'm just so afraid. Even when I get my teeth, I'm just afraid of any time that surgery is mentioned. And so I went to the Optimum Health Institute because, frankly, it was cheap and I needed some time to think. And then I learned all this wonderful information, which I probably could have learned at True North, but there was no internet back then. And I had never heard of True North at that time. And so I went on the diet, which was a raw vegan diet without sugar, oil, salt, or flour, or alcohol. I don't think it necessarily had to be raw to not knowing what I know now. Just taking out all the processed food probably would have worked, but it was raw. And I stayed on it for 6 months. Actually stayed on it for about 2 years. I couldn't stay 100% raw, but I stayed on it for 6 months. And 6 months later, I went back to the doctor and I had a repeat procedure. And when he looked at my insides, he said, "Where did you go for surgery?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, I have pictures of all your polyps, the size and location, and your colon is now completely clear, clean, vascular, like a newborn baby. So where did you get the operation?" I'm like, "I didn't have an operation. I just changed my diet." And he said, "Well, that's impossible." And one of the assisting doctors, who I think was from India, when he left the room, said, "I believe you." And so that was when my life changed, and I realized that food as medicine, not food as medicine, food is medicine. And that's when the whole trajectory of my life changed from what I was doing professionally to getting this message out to everybody that what you eat makes a difference, and that most diseases are at the end of your knife and fork, and you can change it.
That's another fascinating story. I love those to hear those stories, and I love when people hear those stories because I mean we get inspired by listening and just trying to follow the same approach. So I think that's going to be very beneficial for our viewers to know that you personally had a story of challenging medical condition that you were able to reverse, and with diet. So that's amazing. My next question is around how we can be better feeding kids and teens. I personally have two daughters. My youngest one, she's 3.5, and she was raised on a raw vegan diet, and she's absolutely healthy. My older one, she's 14. And that time when she was born, I didn't know nothing about plant-based food. We transitioned the whole family to plant-based diet, but she's still, I mean, she eats a lot of processed food. So what recommendation you can give as a chef coming from your culinary experience, to parents of those kids with a kind of, restricted list of foods that they can eat because their taste bud, they're still did not adjust. I mean, even though, they started to explore and eat plant-based diet, but she wants to eat processed food. So what recommendation you
Yeah.
can
It's very hard to change a person's diet. I've once heard it said it's easier to change somebody's religion than it is to change their diet, because once
Right.
they develop those addictive tastes, the sugar, the fat, the salt, it's really hard to reverse it. And so I think the best advice is that parents, before you have kids, clean up your own act, clean up your diet, and even before you get pregnant, so that you're eating this way, because they have to learn it from somewhere. Somebody is buying them the food because they don't have jobs and they're not driving. So changing the diet once these tastes have developed, especially if they've had dairy and sugar, can be really, really difficult. So I think one of the things you can do is, it's hard to, depending on the age of the kid and the personality, it's hard to just necessarily just take everything away, but try to implement more healthy food, however you can do it. So for example, it's not that maybe you could, some parents would say, look, now that I know parents that once they learned this information and read a book like Dr. Furman's book, Disease Proof Your Child or Fast Food Genocide, said to their kids, sorry, this is it, no more. And they stopped buying it. That's a parental decision everyone has to make. But what you can do is always have healthy food ready. And so maybe say, you can have this food, it's a treat when we go out, but in the house, we only have healthy food, and have lots of variety of healthy food always ready. A lot of kids are lazy, most people are, and they might not think to eat an apple. Hey, but if the apple's cut up and maybe there's like a caramel dip that you can make out of fresh dates, maybe they'll eat it. Maybe they won't sit there and eat a salad or some steamed greens, but if you can make them a chocolate smoothie from my book that has spinach in it, which they won't see or taste, maybe they'll eat that. So maybe use some of these richer or more transitional foods until they can really develop their palate to like fruits and vegetables, and let the kid get involved in like the shopping. It doesn't matter what fruit or what vegetable they eat, but they have to eat fruits and vegetables. Let them pick it out. Let them help with the cooking. And there's Facebook groups like Disease Proof Your Child that Sharon McCrae, and suggestions for this very difficult process of changing a kid's diet. But at the end of the day, you're the parent, and what you say goes. And I think over time, especially if you explain it to them within the ability that they can understand, a lot of times with kids, if they're not vegan, kids love animals, and maybe the movie Earthling is too much for them to see, but they can understand the compassion. And if they understand, where it comes from, sometimes that's enough for kids. Dairy is especially problematic because it's so addictive, anything with sugar. But the idea is just to get as much healthy food as you can into them, and just say, look, you want this treat, got to eat your salad first. That's just the way it is.
I loved your idea of masking certain foods,
Yep.
using them in, like a
Yeah, you
shake.
could, like, for instance, most kids like pasta with marinara sauce. Marinara sauce is really easy to hide stuff in. You could actually hide greens in it. If you blend it, you could hide beets in it, carrots. There's a way to pump up vegetables in things. Like most kids will eat hummus, and you can add vegetables to it by making like red bell pepper hummus. So there's ways to sneak vegetables in without kids necessarily knowing it.
That's true. Yes. I want to come back a little bit and explore more on the secrets of the ultimate weight loss. So what are your secrets?
My secrets are, at the end of the day, a caloric density. That is the biggest secret. So lowering the average, not counting calories, because that doesn't work, because it does work, but it's not sustainable. Most people cannot manage eating less for long. But this principle of caloric density that a researcher at Penn State University, Dr. Barbara Rolls, has spent her life's work understanding and teaching, that understanding the average calorie density per pound of food, that food ranges in caloric density from about 100 calories per pound, which is vegetables, and 4,000 calories per pound, which is oil, and lowering the average calorie density of what you eat. And as luck would have it, that the foods that are the most low in caloric density are also the foods highest in nutrient density. And these are the fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And of these, you can freely eat and be healthy and lose weight if you need to, and still eat large, satisfying portions of food. Vegetables are not that popular in our country. Americans eat less than 10% of their calories from fruits and vegetables, and over 92% of their calories from animal products and processed foods. So simply by eating more fruits and vegetables at every meal, making sure that half your plate is vegetables, you lower the average caloric density of that meal. You're diluting it so that you can lose weight, but still eat large portions and still eat some of the other richer foods at the same time. But you got to eat vegetables. You got to eat a lot of them.
What's going to be the right proportion on your plate? So you just mentioned half plate.
So visually it would be about half the plate should be fruits and vegetables, and half the plate should be the other stuff, which is, what I recommend is starch, sweet potatoes, rice, beans, those kind of things. But visually half that plate needs to be vegetables. And that's just for health too,
What you personally typically eat in the span of the day, and what is your favorite snack?
Yeah, so I'm not a snacker, and I just never have been. I'm either hungry or I don't like putting food in my mouth all day. I'm just busy and it's kind of annoying. So I tend to eat large meals that are so satisfying that they hold me, 4 to 5 hours. My favorite lunch that I have almost every day is a Hannah yam. It's this yellow yam that is so different than any other sweet potato you've ever tried. It has subtle hints of vanilla, but it's creamy and it's not too sweet. And so I'll have a large one that probably weighed 2 pounds before cooking, maybe 1.5 after. I'll roast it and I'll eat it with about a pound of broccoli, and I'm in heaven. And I can eat that every day for lunch, and I love it. And then I generally don't eat breakfast because I exercise in the morning. If I do have breakfast, it's some kind of savory vegetable dish. What did I have today? Today I had rutabaga. I had air fried rutabaga because I love rutabaga. I love turnips, things like that. And then dinner is usually one of my recipes from my book. It's usually some kind of soup or stew or chili, cauliflower bisque, and I'll have it over a grain like rice, and I'll put some raw greens like arugula on top. And then if I'm still hungry, I'll have either fresh fruit or frozen fruit put in like one of those machines to make sorbet for dessert. And I'm very happy with my food. It's delicious.
Yeah. Do you like using the air fryer? I mean, how does it
I
work?
do. I can't believe I lived, most of my life without it, but then I was gifted the Breville air fryer, which is the mother of all air fryers. And I don't use it every day, but I use it quite frequently because it makes delicious French fries and sweet potato fries, and corn is delicious. Everything's better in the air fryer. So I do use it, and I do really, really like it a lot. And I use my Instant Pot a lot too. Both of those tools are the two that I really use the most.
And you don't put any oil in the air fryer?
I don't know. Oh no, I don't. I don't even know where you would put oil in the air fryer because it would leak. I mean, the trays. I know. I don't put. You don't need to put any oil or salt in the air fryer or in the Instant Pot. Absolutely, you don't need it.
And what's your favorite dessert?
Oh gosh, I just created for a webinar a lemon meringue pie that's like to die for. So right now that's my favorite. So I'm going to say lemon meringue pie.
It sounds delicious. Chef AJ, where people can find you? Do you have a website? And
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a website. It's my name, Chef AJ website. And if you just put Chef AJ in Google, you'd find out a lot about me, I'm sure.
Well, thank you so much, Chef Ajay, for being with us today. And I'd like to encourage our viewers to take the time and check your website, chefajwebsite.com, where you plan before they plan their next meal. And check the books, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss is just a must read. You can find a lot on Chef Ajay website. With her guidance, you can switch to healthy eating without compromising taste. So thank you so much for being with us, and everyone stay healthy always. I'm your host, Angelina Kardash, and thank you for watching us today.